Hi, Notre Dame fans. Welcome in. I am Ashton Pollard here with Tyler Horka of blueandgold.com, and we just wrapped up a full practice that we were able to watch, and also we got to talk with the specialists. So we'll start there. I guess we can just kind of begin with offense versus defense. We both thought the defense looked significantly better than the offense today. I'll let you comment on that because you were primarily watching the offense.
Yeah, I think that's a good sign for Notre Dame as well, because 2 weeks ago to the day we watched a full practice, kind of the same structure as today's. They would do some individual stuff, but then they did some 7-on-7, 11-on-11. That day I thought the offense looked better than the defense. Today the defense looked really good. Started with the Prince Collie breakup on Audric Estime trying to catch a pass over the middle. That kind of set the tone. There was a lot of physical play by the defense, even though it looked like they were wearing shells. I don't even think they were wearing shoulder pads.
No, there were no pads.
They had helmets on, though, and there was some physical stuff up front. Riley Mills got to Blake Fisher on the edge on the right side. I thought that was really impressive. I'm not sure who batted the ball away on that play, but Tyler Buchner had his pass swatted because Mills kind of collapsed the pocket. So just from front to back, really good stuff from the Notre Dame defense. I thought there was more 7-on-7 than 11-on-11, and during the 7-on-7, the defensive backs played really well, and there were times, especially when Drew Pine was playing quarterback, where he'd sit back there for 3-4 seconds, probably a sack if you're playing 11-on-11 at that point, and he would just have to dump it down to Logan Diggs, who, by the way, is wearing a blue jersey, shed the red jersey, full contact. Ben Morrison welcomed him back with a heavy thump. Drew Pine on one of those dump downs that we're talking about, where he just had to kind of get the ball out. Logan Diggs was waiting on it for a little bit. Ben Morrison got up there and said, welcome back to physical football. Again, no pads, but he laid the thunder on him.
I guess that is a good sign for him playing at Ohio State, because we were told he had to play through contact in practice before he could play in Columbus, and that was surely contact.
Yes, it was. But offensively, Michael Mayer is Michael Mayer. I thought every time he was throwing the ball, he did really good. There was someone who was covering. I can't remember who it was, but J.D. Bertrand or Jack Kaiser tried to come over and help as a linebacker, and the defensive back was draped all over Mayer. Still went up, caught it, two hands along the sideline. So he looks really good. He's your guy. I thought Matt Salerno looked really good.
I agree with that, actually. And we joke about this, and no disrespect to Matt Salerno. He's great, but we continue to see that Matt Salerno can be the MVP of practice on a regular basis.
And I'm not saying he's going to be the MVP of September 3rd's game in Columbus, but I think he's actually going to play, and he's going to play a lot. Again, somewhat out of necessity. Deion Colsey did not practice today. Jaden Thomas didn't practice today, so there's two wide receivers right there. Xavier Watts has filled in. He played wide receiver today. Marcus Freeman said yesterday that in Thursday's scrimmage he played both sides of the ball. Today he only played wide receiver, and he looked really good. He made a couple contested catches, runs really good routes, gets open. I think that's what you're looking for if you're Notre Dame from these wide receivers. If the numbers are going to be this low, you're going to play if you can get open and give Tyler Buchner somebody to throw the ball to. Xavier Watts might be one of those guys. And again, Matt Salerno, I think, is one of those guys. He was getting a lot of first-team reps. He was out there with Braden Lenzy and Lorenzo Styles. Those were your three wide receivers most of the time. Michael Mayer, by the way, was basically playing wide receiver. I didn't see him up on the line much. Always split out wide. So if those are your four pass catchers, I think you have some good options there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you said. And Mayer's just watching him is a treat. I'll put it that way. I thought some of the younger tight ends looked pretty good too. I remember, and I believe I heard Freeman correct you, but he just yelled twos, and both Raritan and Stays ran out. So do with that what you will. They mix up a lot of these groups, so don't take that as Bible. But the moment they ran up, I was like, oh, interesting, okay. They both, I think, looked good. Stays had a nice catch, I believe, at one point. Joe Wilkins was playing today, full contact, which is a good sign for Ohio State. Obviously, we mentioned Diggs. Was there anybody else on the injury front that you mentioned? Thomas and Colsey, but otherwise?
Jarrett Patterson was scootering around with a wrapped up foot. I know Marcus Freeman said sprain, 10 days. That didn't really look to me like a guy who's going to be playing in 2 weeks. Again, sometimes these things heal rapidly, but based on what we saw today, didn't look good. On another note, aside from the injuries, I'll just put this out there because I know you were a big Audric Estime stan. He was running with the ones a lot. There were drills out there today when the offense got out there for the first time, and you're going down your checklist. You're like, okay, that's Buchner's out there. The tackles that you think are going to be out there.
Yeah.
Mayer, the wide receivers that I mentioned. And then there's Estime, and I'm like, okay, he might be getting first-team reps in the season. I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, and that goes with Dylan McCullough the other day. I don't know if it was a slip of the tongue, but you said lead back when he referred to Estime. He said he can do everything that a lead back can. And again, I mean, you can have a variety, I guess, of lead backs kind of, and McCullough's made clear that he's not going to have a 1, 2, 3, 4. But the moment he said that, I know that all of our brains were like, interesting. We can switch over to talking with the specialists after, and there was some news out of yesterday's press conference too. Marcus Freeman essentially named Blake Grupe, the Arkansas State transfer, as the starting kicker, and then John Sott, the Harvard graduate transfer, if they played today. Mason confirmed that today, actually, that they that's who would start if they had to play a game today. They're both very impressive young men. I mean, you can tell like there's a confidence about them that I think comes with having played 4 years of college football already. And then on the topic of Grupe, I know obviously Sott was not here in the spring, sorry. But he had kind of a rocky spring, I would say. Marcus Freeman wasn't thrilled, and he made that clear after the spring game. But it seems that he's come around, and I can let you talk a little bit more about what we've heard about him and then seen from him and talking with him today.
Yeah, it's interesting that him coming around coincides with John Sott arriving. Yeah. That's his holder, and apparently his friend of a long time. Yeah. A lot of these specialists, they end up going to the same camps all over the country because it's kind of a niche thing. It's not like
sorry, I was just going to say, there aren't very many of them. It's like I talked to a lot of the walk-ons that Brian Mason brought in, and they're like, oh yeah, I know everyone already on the team. Like they just all know each other.
Yeah, so Sott and Grupe are rooming together. They're going to be roommates all season. I think there's confidence comes with comfort, and they're comfortable with each other, so that helps. And I think that they just have a really good relationship. You got to remember, Blake Grupe's at Arkansas State for like 5 or 6 years, whatever it was, and then he gets here in the spring, and everything's a little different. A little more pressure probably. This is Notre Dame, not Arkansas State.
I would say no offense to Arkansas State, but the facilities are probably a little different.
Oh, and Sott mentioned that too. He said, I mean, coming from Harvard, you said impressive young man. You could tell that this guy has a Harvard degree. Yeah. He told me what he's majoring in. I forget what it is. Go to blueandgold.com because I'm writing a story about him, but just very impressive. You're like, oh, this guy's not majoring in, but getting his master's in. Yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. And I think those two guys are going to have really good seasons, which is great news for Notre Dame fans because 2 months ago we're sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, this special team's going to be a nightmare. You know, Bramblett went to LSU, Doerr's not here anymore. So you're kind of holding your breath with the special teams. But today, talking with them, I was like, I'm pretty impressed with them as people. And it's not strange to me that that's the case because Brian Mason, I think he might be the most intellectual coach on the staff, just the way he speaks. I think I learned something about special teams, multiple things about special teams, just being in a 15-minute, scrum with him today. So, smart coach, smart players.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And then I guess just maybe like a little logistical thing in terms of Grupe, because his range, I believe his career long in games is 50, and he was asked about it today. He said he's comfortable at 55-ish. Obviously, that's dependent upon weather. If you're playing in the middle of a tropical storm, probably not going to be kicking 55-yard field goals. But he feels confident in him up to 55 usually. And then the kickoff specialist will be Bryce McPherson. He has a massive leg. I don't know exactly how tall he is, but he is tall for a kicker. So he will be the kickoff specialist. It will not be Blake Grupe. And I feel like I can laugh when I say that because when Grupe was asked, he laughed. He was like, no, I will not be kicking off. And then in terms of the return game, Mason said if we played today, Tyree would be the kickoff returner and Joseph with kind of a 1A, 1B Joseph Salerno situation for punting. There are other guys that were thrown out. Jabron Payne has been working on punt return stuff. I'm trying to remember the other couple that he mentioned.
Styles. Yes. Lorenzo Styles.
Braden Lindsay was the other one. Yep. So kind of a whole group there, but Tyree and Joseph are, I would say, the names to know, with Matt Salerno hanging in right there too. And I know that Mason, we've talked about this too. Like Mason is big on having your best players play special teams, which often are some of your starters, and it seems like he's really following through with that. The starters are out there playing. He acknowledged like we're probably not going to throw all of our wide receivers out there at one time because we don't have very many, but he's like we have so much depth at linebacker, safety that we feel confident that we can throw some of our starters out there and not have many problems. And yep, so that's kind of all we have unless you have any final notes. No? Cool. Awesome. So I think we'll be back on Monday. This weekend, both practices are closed. I think they actually might be off tomorrow. Don't quote me on that, but we will not be here. So we'll be back next week, and we get a couple more position groups. Don't get an open practice next week, but we're kind of getting into the final stretch here. Next week, I guess, would be the final fall camp week because the following week is game week. So, we will be back. Make sure you head to blueandgold.com where we will have a bunch of stories on all of the stuff we just talked about and more, and you can still get that for just $1. So sign up there, and we will be back next week.